So in the last video we have derived the market demand curve for ice cream, and you have seen how we got the market demand curve through the horizontal summation of individual demand curves. Now this downward sloping demand curve basically tells us that there is an inverse relationship between the quantity demanded and the own price. There is an inverse relationship between the x and the y coordinates. But now what is really the mechanism that we get this inverse relationship? So we are basically trying to go another layer deeper and see what is the mechanism for this inverse relationship. So let us start with price point $5. Let's say that the initial price is $5. Just use a different pen, my ink is running out. Okay, so let's say we are at the initial price $5, and at that initial price the total quantity demanded by all buyers of ice creams in the market is 13 ice creams. Now if price goes up for whatever reason, there is an increase in the price of ice cream, then there is an upward movement along the same demand curve. There is an upward movement along the same demand curve so that the quantity demanded drops from 13 to 7. Similarly, if for whatever reason there was a decrease in the price of ice cream, instead of 5 the price dropped to $2, then there would be a downward movement along the same demand curve so that the quantity demanded would now rise from 13 to 19, right? So what we are really saying is that as the price increases, as P own increases such that you have P3 greater than the initial price P1, the quantity demanded goes down. That means there is a decrease in the quantity demanded, and this happens through an upward movement along the demand curve. And in this class I am going to call the demand curve the D curve. It means the demand curve. And similarly we could say as the price, that is P own, decreases such that you have P2 less than P1, and you know P2 is $2, you can clearly see that the quantity demanded increases to 19 ice creams, and that happens through a downward movement along D curve. So this is precisely what I was talking about. We had already covered this inverse relationship under law of demand, but the mechanism through which the law of demand takes place is through an upward or a downward movement along the same demand curve. There is an upward movement whenever there is a price increase, and there is a downward movement whenever there is a price decrease, and this entire dynamics on the demand side, assuming everything else in the market stays constant, is also known as change in quantity demanded. So here we are looking at a change in quantity demanded, or a movement along the demand curve always brings about a change in quantity demanded. Please note, and I will keep reiterating this all through this module, that a change in quantity demanded is only brought about by own price, and it is only executed through the mechanism of a movement along the demand curve. So price can never ever cause any other change but just a movement along the demand curve so that the quantity demanded changes. Now next we are going to talk about a relaxation of the assumption of ceteris paribus. That means we are going to relax the assumption that everything else in the market stays constant, and instead we are going to say what happens if some of these other conditions in the market changes while the own price of the commodity stays constant. So we will see what happens in the market, what happens in the demand side if any of the other conditions in the market change while own price of the commodity stays constant.